The countdown reaches 4 minutes before I even realize the demolition sequence has already started. I am standing in the cargo hold of an old human warship, one of 6 sitting in the scrap bay waiting to be broken apart for parts, and the red numbers glowing on the wall panel in front of me were not there 10 minutes ago. My name is Ethan Cole, and until this exact second, my job was simple. I clean these ships, I log their broken systems, I make sure nobody forgets what they used to be, even if nobody else on this station cares. Right now, none of that matters, because in 4 minutes, demolition charges wired through this hull are going to fire, and I am still standing inside it. The cargo hold around me suddenly feels different, colder somehow, though nothing about the temperature has actually changed. Small indicator lights along the base of the walls blink in a slow, steady rhythm I have never seen before, each one marking a charge point wired into the structure decades ago, and reactivated only in the last few minutes. Somewhere beneath my boots, a low mechanical click echoes through the deck plating, the sound of something arming itself for the first time in years. I slap my comm without thinking. This is Ethan, Deck 7, Cargo Hold 3. Someone moved up the demolition schedule and I am still inside the ship. Static answers me first, then a tired voice cuts through. Deck 7 is supposed to be clear. Confirm you evacuated an hour ago. I did not get the memo, I snap, already moving toward the nearest exit hatch, my heart slamming against my ribs. Cancel the sequence. Charges are already primed for remote detonation, the voice says, sounding more annoyed than alarmed. I will flag it, but the foreman runs a strict schedule. Get out through Corridor 4, fastest route to the airlock. I run, and for the first time in my life, running through this ship feels like it might actually be the last thing I ever do. Corridor 4 is sealed, a maintenance lock jammed halfway through some repair nobody finished years ago. I hit the release panel twice, 3 times, nothing. Beside the jammed hatch, one of the charge cases sits bolted to the wall, its indicator light blinking faster now than it was a minute ago. I pull a small tool from my belt, the same one I use to pry open access panels during routine cleaning, and jam it into the seam of the casing, hoping against every reasonable expectation that I might slow it down or pull a wire loose before it matters. The casing does not budge. It was built to survive exactly this kind of desperate attempt, and for a horrible second I understand that no amount of scrubbing experience is going to help me here. I drop the tool and keep moving, because standing still and failing is worse than running and hoping. 3 minutes. I turn back the other way, sprinting past dark consoles and dead screens, toward a section of this ship I know better than anyone alive, because I am the only person who has ever bothered to actually walk through it instead of just cataloging it from a checklist. My comm crackles again. It is Grace Miller, a station engineer who has always treated me like more than just the person who wipes down the tourist decks. Ethan, I am pulling up the demolition grid now, she says, her voice tight. The charges are set along the spine, deck by deck. If they fire in sequence, that entire hold collapses in under a minute. I know exactly where they are, I say, breathless. I have logged every wire on this ship for 3 years. Then use that, she says, because the foreman is refusing to delay the countdown. He says one trapped worker is not worth losing the whole demolition contract. 2 minutes. I reach the lower engineering section, the same place where, weeks ago, my hand brushed against a panel that felt warmer than the metal around it. I press my palm against it again, desperate, with nothing left to lose. The screen lights up instantly this time, as if it has been waiting for exactly this moment. Identify. Crewman requesting emergency override, I say, my voice cracking. This ship is set to detonate in under 2 minutes with me still inside. Voice print confirmed. Threat assessment complete. Emergency protocols engaged. The lights across the deck snap on, steady and bright, and somewhere far below me I feel the whole ship shudder, like something enormous waking up in the middle of a threat instead of before one. What is happening in there? Grace asks, her voice sharp with disbelief. Ethan, half the readings on my display just changed. Power levels across that hull are spiking. She is awake, I say, and even in the middle of this, the words feel strange leaving my mouth. The ship is awake, Grace. Demolition charges detected along primary structural spine, the ship says, calm even now. Countermeasures engaging. I do not fully understand what that means until the deck beneath me hums with a different kind of energy. A low vibration that spreads outward from the center of the hull like a held breath finally being released. Through the nearest viewport I see thin fields of light bloom across sections of the hull where the charges are wired, wrapping around them like a hand closing gently over something small. 1 minute. Ethan, the countdown just froze, Grace says, disbelief replacing the panic in her voice. It says active interference detected. The foreman is losing his mind down here. I allow myself half a breath of relief, but only half, because the ship's next words remind me this is not over yet. Structural integrity fields active. Recommend immediate crew relocation to command deck. Detonation delay is temporary, not permanent. How temporary? I ask. 90 seconds before secondary trigger activates from external control. Additional note. Shielding coverage on Deck 5 is incomplete. Charge point nearest the reactor conduit remains partially exposed. My stomach drops. Can you cover it in time? Redirecting available power now. Estimated completion, 40 seconds. I watch a live feed on a nearby screen, as a second field flickers weakly around that last charge point, thinner than the others, struggling to hold steady. For a moment it dips low enough that I can see the charge casing clearly through the gap, and I hold my breath as if that alone might keep it from failing. Then the field steadies, brightening just enough to close the last visible seam, and the screen shifts from a warning amber to a calm, steady blue. Deck 5 secured, the ship reports. All charge points now contained. I run again, this time toward the lift, my legs shaking with a mix of fear and something close to disbelief. The doors open the moment I reach them, as if the ship already knew exactly where I needed to be next. Grace, can you get to the foreman? I ask through the comm as the lift climbs. Whatever those charges are wired to externally, someone needs to stop him from triggering it again. I am already running, she says, and I can hear it in her voice, boots hitting metal decking somewhere else on this station. He does not believe me when I tell him that ship just came online. He thinks it is a system glitch. Then make him believe it, I say, because in 90 seconds he is going to try again. The lift stops, and the doors open onto the true bridge of this ship. Dark screens blinking awake one after another, the air already warmer than it was a few minutes ago, carrying a low hum that feels less like machinery and more like something breathing steadily after holding its breath for a very long time. Rows of consoles curve around the room, each one lighting from the edges inward, as if the ship is waking up gently instead of all at once, careful not to overwhelm whoever finally walked through that door. I collapse into the command chair because my legs will not carry me any further. Screens around me show live feeds across decks I have cleaned for years but never truly understood, revealing systems that were apparently never dead at all, only waiting. Ship, I say, my voice steadier now than I expect. Can you stop the external trigger completely, not just delay it? External override requires authenticated command authority, the ship answers. Awaiting your instruction, Captain. Nobody has ever called me that before tonight. I sit up straighter, even with a countdown somewhere still ticking toward 0. Override the external trigger, I say. Protect this hull. Nobody gets hurt because of a scheduling mistake. Understood. Down on the station level, Grace reaches the demolition control room just as the foreman, a stocky man named Owen Pierce who has clearly spent his whole career trusting checklists more than people, reaches for the manual detonator switch. Do not touch that, she says, breathless, blocking the console with her whole body. That ship just came online. It has an actual crew inside it right now. Impossible, Owen says, though his hand hesitates over the switch. These hulls have been dead for decades. There is no power source strong enough to run active defense systems, let alone life support and command functions at the same time. Then explain why my readings show full structural shielding across every charge point, Grace snaps, sliding a display in front of him. Explain why the countdown froze on its own before anyone told it to. Owen stares at the numbers, and for the first time since the countdown started, his confidence cracks. His hand stays on the switch a moment longer, and Grace steps closer, keeping her voice level even though her heart is clearly still racing. If you trigger that manually right now, she says, and it turns out I am right, you will have detonated charges against a hull that just proved it can defend a living crew member. That will not stay quiet, not on this station, and not with whoever oversees demolition contracts above your position. Owen finally lets go of the switch entirely, stepping back as if the console itself had grown too hot to touch. Fine, he says quietly. Show me the readings again. Grace turns the display toward him fully, and as he studies it, some of the tension in his shoulders gives way to something closer to worry. This was never supposed to happen today, he admits. Corporate moved the audit date up without warning us. I pushed the whole bay's schedule forward by 2 days to make the numbers look clean before the inspection team arrives. I never checked whether every worker log matched the new timeline. You skipped the clearance check, Grace says, not unkindly, though the words still land hard. I skipped the clearance check, Owen repeats, quieter this time. I was trying to protect a quota. I nearly cost someone his life over a quota. Back on the bridge, I watch the external trigger signal blink red on my display, then flicker, then finally shift to a steady green as the ship quietly severs the connection from the outside, the same way someone might close a door softly instead of slamming it. External detonation link neutralized, the ship reports. All charges rendered inert. Station perimeter secure. A moment later, a second alert flashes across my display, unrelated to the charges but no less urgent. 2 tug ships assigned to haul away expected debris are still holding position directly along this hull's projected collapse zone, unaware that the demolition has already failed. Broadcasting hazard clearance to station traffic control, the ship says, without waiting for me to ask. Tug vessels rerouting now. I watch on the screen as the 2 small ships peel away from their holding pattern, their pilots clearly startled by a warning transmission from a hull that was never supposed to be capable of sending one. I let out a breath I did not realize I was holding since the moment those red numbers first appeared in front of me. "Grace," I say into the comm, my voice shaking with relief now instead of fear. "Tell me it is over." "It is over," she says, and I can hear the same relief flooding into her voice. Owen just watched his own detonator display go completely dark. I think he finally believes me. Owen's voice comes through a moment later, quieter than before, almost apologetic in a way I never expected from him. "If that ship really is active, I owe someone inside it an explanation." "You owe him more than that," Grace says. "You nearly demolished a ship with a real, living crew still inside it. Over a scheduling error, nobody bothered to double-check." I sit back in the command chair, staring at screens that show a station slowly settling back into calm, alarms fading one by one, until the only sound left is the steady hum of a hull that has clearly decided it is done pretending to be scrap. "Ship," I say quietly, "why did you wait this long? Why not answer sooner, before things got this dangerous?" "Reactivation requires sustained crew presence and demonstrated care prior to threat response," the ship answers. "You are the only individual who met that requirement in 41 years. Every prior demolition and inspection cycle was survivable without intervention. This one was not." I almost laughed despite everything, because of course that is exactly how it happened. 41 years of patience, and it finally chose the one moment when patience alone would have gotten someone killed. An alien engineer named Doran finds me there an hour later, standing at the threshold of the real bridge with an expression somewhere between disbelief and something close to respect. Doran has overseen this scrap bay for as long as I have worked here, and has never once called any of these ships anything other than dead weight. "You told me these hulls still mattered," Doran says slowly. "I told you that you were wasting your effort on empty metal." "Most people did," I answer, without anger. Only the tired honesty of someone who nearly lost everything over a mistake that was never his to begin with. "What happens to her now?" Doran asks, glancing at the glowing consoles around us. "She gets her name back," I say. "Not as scrap, not as a museum piece, as a real ship, with a real crew, starting with me." Grace arrives soon after, still catching her breath from running across half the station, but smiling in a way I have never seen from her before tonight. "You know," she says, glancing around the bridge, "when I saw that countdown freeze on its own, I thought the whole system had malfunctioned. I never once considered the ship simply decided to save you itself." "Neither did I admit. Not until it actually happened." "For what it is worth," she says, "I do not think anyone on this station is going to call these ships scrap again." Word spreads through the station faster than any official report could travel. By the time the next sleep cycle begins, most workers on every deck have heard some version of what happened, each retelling a little more dramatic than the last. Some say the ship spoke directly into the demolition foreman's own headset. Others say the countdown reversed itself with seconds to spare. I do not correct any of it. The important part is true enough on its own. The station director summons me personally the next day, her expression unreadable in the way senior officials manage after years of practice handling situations nobody trained them for. "The demolition contract on that bay is cancelled," she says, without waiting for me to ask. "Effective immediately, and permanently." "Just like that?" I ask. "Nobody demolishes something that can defend itself, delay its own destruction, and choose its own crew in the middle of an active countdown," she says. "That decision stopped being ours to make the moment it happened. We simply did not realize it until today." "What about the other bays?" I ask. "The ones still scheduled for scrapping across the rest of the station?" She pauses, studying me the way someone studies a report they had not expected to need this soon. "I imagine those schedules will need a much closer review," she says. "It seems your ships have opinions of their own about that. We would be foolish to ignore them twice." I nod, still adjusting to how quickly everything has changed since a single warm panel first responded to my hand weeks ago. Doran returns later that evening, standing quietly at the edge of the bridge instead of the doorway this time. as if unsure whether stepping further inside still requires permission. The other engineers keep asking me how a ship nobody serviced in decades still had working defense systems, Doran says. I do not have an answer that makes sense to them. Tell them the truth, I say. She was never broken. She was just choosing who was worth waking up for. Doran considers that for a long moment. That is not an answer that makes them comfortable. It was not meant to, I say. It was meant to be true. Over the following days, the other ships docked in that same bay begin answering as well, one hull after another lighting up quietly, systems long thought dead humming gently back to life. Nobody schedules them for demolition either. Nobody dares to raise the idea again. The scrap bay that once existed only to strip these ships down piece by piece now feels more like a quiet harbor, where something long lost is finally being welcomed home. News of what happened does not stay confined to this station for long. Trade pilots passing through repeat the story to their next port, and within a week, messages start arriving from stations further along the same route, asking quiet questions about whether other forgotten human hulls scattered across old scrapping yards might still be listening too. Nobody has an answer yet. For the first time in 41 years, that uncertainty feels less like an ending, and more like a beginning, waiting to be explored. I spend that evening walking the corridors I used to clean, without ever fully understanding what they meant, and for the first time, every panel, every light, every quiet hum beneath my boots feels like it belongs to something that chose to trust me before anyone else ever did. I spend that evening walking the corridors I used to clean without ever fully understanding what they meant, and for the first time, every panel, every light, every quiet hum beneath my boots feels like it belongs to something that chose to trust me before anyone else ever did. Grace walks part of the way with me, quiet for once, her eyes moving over consoles and corridors she has only ever seen through old inspection reports. It does not feel like a scrap hull anymore, she says eventually. It never was one, I answer. It just needed someone willing to notice. Ship, I say, standing alone on the bridge as the lights settle into a steady, calm glow around me. Thank you for waiting for someone who actually noticed you. Crew presence acknowledged, the ship answers, warmth somehow present in words that should not carry any warmth at all. Ready for your next command, Captain. I look out through the viewport at the quiet stretch of stars beyond the station, at a future that, until today, none of us expected this ship to ever be part of again. For now, I say, just keep the lights on. We have a lot of history to catch up on, and I intend to make sure nobody ever forgets it again. And somewhere deep in her hull, for the first time in 41 years, I feel this ship settle into something that is not survival, and is not fear, but is simply purpose. Whatever comes next, whoever else assumes a species that went quiet decades ago has nothing left worth protecting, they will have to go through her first. And they will have to go through me.